I would like to ask at the very end for an update on one little bitty thing. It's the trail crossing thing. I think, Deb, one of your committees was going to be looking into the kind of installation put at places like where Lee Gulch crosses, various places.
Lee Gulch crosses Prince?
Yeah.
All right,
and-
we have that down as item E.
so, yeah.
Any
Just an
objection?
just an
Well,
update.
I thought we were talking about that in the context of the bicycle pedestrian plan, so I wasn't sure
It is in the bike ped plan.
Right, I think it's
So
there.
that's where we do that? Okay.
It's okay.
In that case, I
Just
crossed
nod,
it off
Charlie.
to be replaced by,
Do we want to consider tabling D for the sewer
a portion of.
portion? Correct.
Yeah.
How do you want to do that? Just do it when we get to it?
Yeah, let's do it when we get to it. If you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So,
But in case somebody's waiting just for that, could we identify that?
is there anybody waiting for sewer stuff?
Well, at home, people might be.
Yes.
We are planning to table that. Pat Fitzgerald expressed some concern about not having enough time in advance. So we're going to table that, make sure that he gets a plan, reschedule that, and make sure that he has notice at least a week or two in advance.
And he's the special district.
I'm sorry, and he is the manager of the Platte Canyon Water and Sanitation and
Southwest Metro.
Southwest Metro. So we won't be, we're planning to postpone that for some period of time.
We don't have a date.
We do not have a date.
No, but it will be in September. So, okay, sorry. Anybody else for sewer? Okay. So there are no changes to the agenda. The agenda is approved as submitted. First item is open space task force update. Deb.
In February of this year, at the workshop, February 18th, council had asked, or we had shared information, Charlie shared information about a variety of parcels that are throughout the city of Littleton that are undesignated, for lack of a better word, undeveloped, potential development, potential open space. It was upon the identification of those properties that it was determined that a follow-up discussion would take place in March. At that follow-up, there was enough interest in creating an open space task force. So on March 17th, council provided a charge to the open space task force of what they wanted the outcome to be, what they wanted the task force to do, and kind of a timeline. And I think council included a lot of information on what they expected the membership of the committee to be, what they wanted us to use as evaluation criteria, a ranking and prioritizing framework, and or system, and then kind of a policy framework. So as the chairman of the Open Space and Parks Task Force, I'm here tonight to give you our 120-day check-in. We actually began meeting on April the 11th. That was our first meeting. And we have been meeting consistently every other Thursday since then. We have taken a brief hiatus at this point in order to present this to council, get council's feedback, and then we'll incorporate it. We'll resume our meetings after the Labor Day holiday. The task force consists of 2 council members, myself and Councilmember Cernanek. Shannon Carter represents Arapahoe County. Justin Spring and Hillary Merritt represent Trust for Public Land. Typically, there's one of them at each meeting, but because of their schedules, they're kind of tag teaming. We did ask for one member from TPL, so they're sharing that responsibility. Bobby Sheffield from South Metro Land Conservancy. John Ostemiller represents South Suburban Parks and Rec. Charlie Bloston represents City of Littleton. Dennis Swain also attends, and he represents City of Littleton. And Tom Wooten is a citizen and he is a developer and commercial real estate broker. We are, the council or the committee is led by Will Singleton of Singleton Strategies. He's our facilitator. He wanted to be here tonight, but he got, coming in from New York, and his flight was coming in later, so. But he's helping us do the facilitation, and that's been very, very helpful because it allows the committee to really spend the hour and a half to 2 hours that we meet really delving into the issues and having good discussion. He keeps us on track, keeps us kind of herded in, keeps us on point to the agenda. He prepares the agenda with kind of a consensus of the group from the prior meeting as to what we need to do. And I think we've been able to, over the last few months that we've been doing it, really get through an awful lot of stuff and really kind of get together a nice plan. You saw in your packet, we included a pretty detailed, in fact, a very thorough explanation of what we've been doing and how we've gotten to where we are and where we're going. And I'll just kind of run through that briefly, just kind of hitting some of the highlights. If there's questions along the way, just holler. Just as a matter of record, we will not be including, obviously in the package you didn't see a list of the parcels that we're considering, and that will not be part of the 120-day check-in. That will be part of your final report. We felt that without the context and the detailing of those parcels, there could be unintended consequences to sharing that information at this point. So that's all something, it's all out there right now. We're working on the criteria, and then we'll apply that criteria to those parcels, and that will be the final report. Any questions on that? So our scope of work, basically council asked us to evaluate parcels or projects and prioritize them based on a consistent set of criteria. So in developing the criteria, our phase one was really to define a list of eligible and relevant parcels. We kind of went there first so that we knew what kind of scope we would be working with. We delineated criteria pretty much based on the charge that council gave us, and how we knew we would be comparing things, also what our existing system looked like, opportunities, potential costs, those things. And then we also working on developing a replicable process. So we want something that council did ask for this, something that can be used in the future as opportunities may present themselves or as land may change, that council can use a process to evaluate. And then phase two will be to analyze. Yes?
In phase one, it would seem in phase one you might also wanting to be looking at the positive and negative impacts on the adjacent or nearby.
And we are.
In phase one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, Peggy, when we're taking a look at the criteria, certainly as you would look at the criteria, it's really in the context, not just of adjacent properties, but actually in the context of kind of the fabric of the city. So it's actually
right,
a broader piece.
But however, I mean, in the March 17th report, I think it would be good to state that in the final version in this area, and then I'll jump ahead just a second on the the process diagram to insert where that would go there in the process diagram, that evaluation or assessment or whatever. just so it's, flagged significantly. Thank you.
Phase 2 will analyze and rank the parcels and provide policy recommendations. Part of our process, as I mentioned earlier, is to meet every 2 weeks. We have a facilitator. And in doing this, we've been able to kind of keep things in some sort of stair step, some sort of order. The first step we did was we kind of created a decision-making timeline. There's a small chart that's very, very condensed timeline. Ours is about 1.5 pages, I think, detailing. But this gives you kind of a big picture, 30,000 feet view of what our timeline is. We also felt it was important to come to a group consensus as to what our understanding of the charge was. And I think this is important for council to buy into this, because it's really our interpretation of what your charge to us was. To conduct an objective and comprehensive analysis and ranking of open space and parks opportunities in the context of potential development, trends toward increased urban density, natural attributes, and the overall system of parks and their use. Some of the documents that we are using as resources, the Littleton Comprehensive Plan. We have also reviewed the National Recreation and Parks Association Level of Service Standards, which were developed in 1995. And we have also reviewed the work of Colorado Springs as the city has sought to kind of define its own system. In addition to that, South Platte Working Group and a lot of their criteria, a lot of the way that they operated that group successfully for 4 years, is also a huge influence. And fortunately, we have some carryover because we have a number of members on this group that were also on that group, and that's been real beneficial. Some of the categories that we're looking at are mini parks, neighborhood parks, community parks, large urban parks, regional parks, preserves, and then the additional category of open space. And we're looking at open space as ways to preserve view sheds and existing neighborhood settings and add to the benefit of a community. The task force is also developing an initial comprehensive list of undeveloped parcels based on the survey of sites all over the city, and this is the list I spoke about earlier. That is something that we will be spending a lot more time on. We've already gone through kind of a big picture list, culled it down a bit, and we'll basically be running all of those parcels through our process of analyzing whether their designation as to criteria the council set forth. We did discuss the criteria. The criteria that council gave us was pretty clear. There were specifically 9 or 11 actually. The 11th one was just kind of said any other criteria the task force members dealt with significant. What we had done is our process was really to all sit down and throw out what we felt were important criteria, and then to take all of those and then match them against what council's criteria was. And it was really very cohesive. It was very right on. I mean, some points drilled down a little further, other points were a little more big picture. But we were able to take all of council's criteria, expected criteria, and apply what we thought we were supposed to do to that. So briefly, the criteria that we developed are, and this is bullet pointed, we blow them out a lot more in our study. Is there a clearly defined need for the project? Is the location relevant to meeting the need or otherwise advantageous? How will the project impact the financial viability of the city positively or negatively in potential tax revenue? Are there multiple agency goals that can be achieved? What are the circumstances of the ownership? Does the property have a willing seller? Is there an estimated timeline to complete the acquisition? What is the estimated budget for the acquisition, development, and maintenance of the property? Are there identifiable sources of funding to complete the project? And are there significant leveraging opportunities? And are there other factors that need to be considered, such as historic value, public attitudes toward the property, and its prospective use, overall integration, and existing into our city systems? Peggy?
First, I should have said this the first time. I mean, this is great work. It's great work. So I'm just doing little things. I wanted to back up before the criteria where you used the concept of maximize economic, both economic development, et cetera. You used the word maximum in the last line. Maybe optimize and optimum might be better there. I'll just suggest that for you all to consider. And then in the second bullet, impact the long-term financial viability. That was in the actual charge, the long-term financial viability. And then next to the last bullet, are there identifiable sources of funding to complete the project? Should it be also perhaps and maintain the project? I mean, it doesn't mean that you would have to have them, but you might consider, because some might need more maintenance.
Actually, that fits in with the bullet just above it. What is the estimated budget for acquisition, development, maintenance? And again, we don't want to recommend a property that South Suburban or the city says we have no use for that property or we cannot manage it.
No, and
Management is maintenance, operation, and continued use of the property.
well, I see that, but it still seems that some things might not be maintained by one set of funds and could use a separate stream of funds.
That's
So
a
it's just
possibility there.
it's just an idea to consider.
Okay.
It's not like you have to do
Understood.
it. Thank you.
We did attach a diagram to the packet, which kind of gives you it's kind of a proposed evaluation and ranking process. It's, the task force is looking at using something like this is to evaluate each parcel, kind of run it through the gauntlet. The importance of community needs, the potential use of the parcel to meet that need, and its relevance to the comprehensive plan should be noted. Cost and opportunity, cost is considered next, and then the ranking of the parcel can be considered as well as its availability from a willing seller. But clearly we felt that one of the things that was going to be most important is to identify the community need. Then the task force, basically the outline of steps, what comes next is looking for council feedback on this document and anything that, that you may want to add this evening. We want to make sure that we are on track with what we do. This will be our last touch point before we present a final document. And we want to make sure that we're on track. Help course correct us at this point, now or never. And then once we incorporate that feedback into our plan, like I said, we will resume our monthly meeting or semi-monthly meetings after Labor Day. We intend to analyze the priority identified parcels, working based on the criteria and the ranking sequence. During this process, we may consider looking at some outside consultants. We've talked about that. Expertise, for example, someone who may have a specific level of expertise on a piece of parcel that may have some interesting aspects to it. And then we're also looking at conducting some site visits. We think that that's going to be important because when you get out and you see the site and not just the land we're looking at, but everything that surrounds that and is around that, that's always real beneficial to people that are, making calls on things. So as we evaluate the parcels, we will continue to seek to modify potential uses to achieve an optimum outcome for the parcel. I think that's really been a top priority for us, is what's the optimum outcome. And some parcels that we're not considering because we don't feel that there is, at this point, an optimum above. And so I think we're being really very fair, very level-headed, very even-handed. We will rank the parcels, and there will be a narrative written with those. There will be some parcels that will be probably a hybrid of a commercial and recreational and open space. It may involve a number of things. It's not going to be an either-or. In those instances, we will write a fairly extensive narrative to kind of give council our thinking on that, and why we kind of came up with that criteria based on some sound facts and information. So hopefully that will be of benefit, because I think as we go forward, one of the things we've really learned is that leaving things, having options, leaving things where you have an opportunity to be a little bit more creative and a little bit less stringent on things provides probably better outcome. And then we will develop the policy recommendations, and those are basically going to be based on our experience going through the process for nearly a year, how we would recommend council continue forward as different parcels may come up, or a certain parcel that may be on the list needs to be reevaluated after a certain period of time because of changing conditions or whatever the case. The Planning Commission is continuing to work on the comp plan, so that may add some tweaking that can be done going through. And we look forward to delivering the final presentation in January. And I think a couple of the things that we are looking for, too, is how council would like to involve the public on this in terms of the presentation, and do you want to have an open or a public hearing, or, do we want to do it in a special meeting? We are not planning to have any outreach meetings before we present this to council, since we're dealing with some some issues that I think, when you're talking about land use and talking about private property and those types of things, I think we need to keep a respect for that. So, but that was something that did come up amongst the committee, is that how do you want to integrate the public comment into the program? So.
Questions? Jose?
Okay, so you go out and you look and find a piece of ground, and you say that looks good for open space, parks, etc. Do you approach the owner and ask him whether he would like to be designated? What kind of designation do you put on that property? Is it consensual or non-consensual?
We are not going to be approaching any property owners based on the property, and the property we're evaluating is what we saw at the workshop. There's a group of that property, it's not all of it, but some of that in there that we'll be looking at. And there are people on the committee who have a prior knowledge. Some of it is already South Platte Working Group has looked at. The Highline Canal Working Group has looked at. So in terms of approaching property owners, we are not going to do that.
Well, what Debbie means is this is a list of properties that are potentials for consensual purchase.
Yep.
So there's no concept of non-consensual condemnation, and it's for purchase, for acquisition.
Yeah, and it states in here that willing landowners only.
Only.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just was wondering whether or not there would be a designation, such as there is in the historic preservation group. We got people walk around and they see a place and they say, "Well, that looks nice," and they designate it, and the homeowner most generally doesn't know anything about it, or the property owner.
No. Yeah.
From my perspective, Jose and Doug, there's no empowerment to the task force to do anything even close to that. Conceivably, it could be a policy recommendation, although I highly doubt that, but that would be as far as it would go at this point in time. As far as the empowerment that the task force has would be to say, hey, maybe there's a policy element that's there. I would say, at the risk of kind of violating some of our discussions so far, I don't think there's any sentiment for non-consensual activity.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce? I was just going to comment, I think to me, the vision looks great, and I like the makeup of the committee, I think, is spot on in terms of looking at the variety of opportunities from different perspectives. I guess from your guys' perspectives, have the conversations been fruitful? Have they been? This look would suggest that they have been, but I'm curious to what you guys think.
If you've noticed, we use our tent cards as notification, and so Will Singleton, if anyone's been at any kind of event that he has, that's kind of the yes, I'd like to speak now kind of piece. People definitely are coming with some perspective, and as Debbie mentioned, there are folks that have a lot of history in the city, not just in their areas of expertise, and are fairly familiar. And so when we talk about site visits, we're going to have folks that have probably been over some of those grounds many, many times in some of that. There's some things that were already in process that are maybe still being nudged along in some of that. I think there's the tension that exists in the group is taking time to develop the vision and looking at that replicable process that becomes somewhat of a sustainable piece to and versus geez, there's some things out there, what are we going to do now kind of thing. And so the tension is the shorter term versus the longer term, and we're still having some fun with it.
From my perspective, I think that the makeup of the group is probably going to give us will be the single factor to the success of this group. Because I have found it just, I sat on South Platte Working Group for 3 years, and there were some interesting discussions there, but this particular group, it has been really enlightening to me to look at things from some different perspectives. Tom Wooten is amazing. He's really, really bringing, I think, a really fresh eye to this, and that's been great because he comes from a developer commercial real estate standpoint. When you talk about open space, it's kind of contradictory, but his perspective on stuff is really educational. I think I'm learning a great deal in there, and I think that it's been also really helpful to have John Ostemiller on the committee because he does have a history with the city, having been on council for so many years and the planning commission. But now that he's on South Suburban, he comes with another perspective. And so his ability to share that and relate it to what he knows we deal with has also been very educational. And I think we're going to come with some really some creative thinking, some innovative thinking. I think this group is putting together what we want to do is we want to get to the meat. We want to get past this. We want to start processing these parcels and seeing, what can we do with these. It's kind of like, okay, we're done with the shopping list. Let's go shop. So, and I don't mean shop for properties, but I mean, let's hit the road on this. So, Charlie, what do you?
The committee is not short on words. So you have a very interested and active group of participants. And as Debbie described, we are very eager to get to the next level where we look at a parcel, a property, and we say, let's start ranking it. we're almost begging to get to that point. Now, we've taken a break during August, so right after Labor Day, all the committee members want to do is say, get the list on the board. We know what that list is. Now let's start playing with it.
Good to know that you're not short, because otherwise we'd have to give you some of ours.
No.
All right, Peggy?
Yes, I'd appreciate a list of the sub-bullets for the criteria, and I suggest they be included in the final,
They will be.
okay? And then, are you considering also properties that that might have a building on them that is in disrepair and could just be leveled or used for some other purpose? Because we have done that, I think, with...
Without trying to identify us or tell you properties because they're specific, there is one that has a building on it.
Well, I remember...
No, we have two. One, two,
There's more than one.
there are buildings
There are
on
some,
some of the
right.
sites, yes.
Okay, I remember...
There are some sites with buildings, and there are some vacant properties, obviously, then.
Yeah, thank you.
Jim?
Debbie, on your process diagram, when you get to submit the list to council, is that what you're thinking is a January timeline? About midway down your list, in a trapezoid-shaped box?
This would be, this is the replicable process, Jim. This is an outline for that. This is not the task force's process. This is what would, at this point in time, what would be the replicable process for consideration. And that,
Meaning every property would go through that,
correct.
that sequence of steps.
So we'll be using it without the step to submit the list. Because we're not going to come each time we come through a piece, a piece of property.
Would you think that once this list gets submitted, that the task force's job is completed? You wrapped up, or do you think you'll be continuing with some of these other criteria that's below that?
I think that would really be up to council. If once we present the plan, the report, if council sees that there's, a good reason for the task force to continue its work, or has additional tasks they would like the task force to work on, then I think that you probably have a willing committee at this point. But I think at this point we recognize that our job as currently assigned to us is over after our report.
I could see there possibly being multiple projects that come out, that there wouldn't be just, you leave it to one group to handle all of what's on the list. That could be the case, but there could also be multiple projects because some of these may not be immediate projects. I mean, they may be longer term in nature. And so some of them we may decide as a council, hey, here's some things that we take on as projects in the short run, and it may be some things that we've done an evaluation, but they're, for whatever reasons, it's a not now activity.
Okay, I think it's a very nice job that you guys have done. Looks like a good set of criteria. Go forth. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
just to finish it up, Doug, I think, between now and just before Labor Day weekend, if someone had comments or thoughts on, particularly on the charge that's there, if you wanted to ruminate on it or whatever, that gives us time to get it back in front of the task force if
You
anyone's
mean the
looking.
March 17th charge?
No, if you look to page 2, it's the common understanding of our charge to create the vision for the task force is, either an endorsement or not, or if you had some thoughts.
Well, yeah, but that goes back to the March 17th charge.
I realize that, but that's a restatement, but coming back.
Okay, well, I like that charge, so.
Good. So we have Bruce and you. Doug, fine. Good.
All right, brings us to item B, which is a presentation of the bike ped master plan.
Council, I'd like to introduce Chris Vogelsang. Chris is a principal with OV Consultants. His firm was selected to prepare our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. As a point of history, we did receive a grant through Tri-County Health from putting communities to work in an effort to prepare a plan for pedestrian and bicycle facilities, pathways, as well as everything else in Littleton. The consultant has done an extensive amount of research. They have had 2 public sessions. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to give you a status of where they are and kind of a briefing of what the plan is going to say without having a full plan document in front of you. The next step is to prepare the final plan, submit it for public comment for 30 days during September, and bring it back to City Council for final acceptance. So I'll let Chris take over from here and tell you the details of what he has been working on.
All right, I'm Charlie. You said everything I wanted to say. No, I'm kidding. Like Charlie said, I'm Chris Vogelsang, and I've been fortunate enough to be working with the city here since January on putting together a pedestrian and bicycle master plan. And just kind of want to say up front that it's been a real pleasure to get to know everybody. City Council has been great. I know Councilwoman Brinkman and Cole have been pretty actively involved, as well as a real active citizen group that we've met with a few times. So it was really, really nice to get that kind of support and input. And also that, this plan has a bunch of elements in it, but what I found as we went through and kind of inventoried the city and checked things out is it's pretty bicycle and pedestrian friendly today. And there's some things we can do to make it even better, but things are going pretty well, and I was pretty happy to get to know you guys. So I'll start with that. I'll go through some high-level stuff quickly. I know our time is short. So like I said, we began in January. This was funded, like Charlie said, through Communities Putting Prevention to Work grant from Tri-County Health, and the idea is supposed to encourage healthy transportation choices that help all of our citizens not get sick so much. There is some money in there. The money includes plan development, and there's money for implementation, as well as some stuff Dave and Charlie have been doing with a bicycle program at the city here that I'm sure he's told you about. The focus of this plan, there's a really, really good, as you guys know, trail system. South Suburban Park and Rec does a great job. And one of the things that we talked about when we started was how do you get to and from things in town and to that trail system without using your car? So how do you ride your bike? How do you walk? How do you do these things? So that was our focus. Involvement and outreach summary. We had 2 partners in this, South Suburban Park and Rec and Littleton Public Schools, that we met with a few times throughout the course of the project to give updates and get input and feedback about the things we were talking about. Did a pretty extensive school outreach program. So my staff went and met with all the elementary and middle schools in Littleton and talked specifically about how kids walk and bike today to school, what could be better, and talked about putting together an education program that we're going to be working through this fall with some education packets to hand out. So that was a big deal. There was a citizen group of, in this case, there were 4 pretty interested citizens that were willing to take a little extra time and participate in some special focus groups as we talked through ideas. That was great. 2 open houses. It doesn't say there, but we had about 100 total attendees, which is you guys actually a pretty well-attended meeting here tonight, but we do a lot of these plans, and sometimes you'll get 20 people, sometimes 50. So this was on the upper end of involvement. We did a presentation at Council District 4's summer meeting, and I saw most of you guys there and gave you a little bit of it. And we had information and a comment form up on Littleton's website. So we really tried to really get out and hear what people said as well as what we saw on the ground. Okay, so let me go through, I'll go through pedestrian stuff and then bicycle stuff. So pedestrian facilities, Our main focus in the pedestrian facility area was to do a sidewalk inventory in the city on streets that were classified as collector streets and higher. So arterials and collectors, those are the more major streets in town, not local or residential streets, to determine the presence of sidewalk, any gaps, and we also looked at some specific crossings, especially with the trail system as it crosses some of the busier roads. So what we were really looking for in our inventory was, is there sidewalk at all? Okay, and if there is sidewalk, is it 5 feet wide or wider? And Charlie and Dave and I talked about and determined that kind of a 5 feet width would be a sort of minimum standard for having really good sidewalk. So I want to hand out a map set here. I think I brought enough copies for the people at the table here. So. And it has some of this information. So as you guys pass this around, I'll go through this with you, and we can look at some of this together. I can pull it up on the screen too. But and the front of that is kind of messed up because my printer kind of pooped out at the end of today. So, so what we found, we actually inventoried almost 120 miles of streets, and that means. Really about 60 miles of street, but both sides, right? So we're looking at the east and west or north and south side. We found that there are about a little over 50 miles of the side of the streets have sidewalk that we consider to be pretty good. About 38 miles had sidewalk, but not 5 feet wide, and 31 miles didn't have any sidewalk. So if you look at it a little differently, you'd say about a fourth of the sides of the streets are collectors and above don't have any sidewalk at all. And if you kind of page through, I don't want to get into, I can get into as much detail as you guys like, but the way this map set is set up is I divided the city into quadrants so that you could actually see the information in a small handout. And so that first page, you see at the bottom, right, it says NW, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast, in order. So if you took them apart and put them together, you could see it all at a good scale. What this map shows, if we just look at that first page, the red, the orangish red there, that's where there is no sidewalk. The yellow is where there was sidewalk, but it was small, and the blue is where there was good sidewalk. And if there isn't color along a street, that means it wasn't part of our inventory. So every street we looked at has it in there. Okay. So that's kind of the big high-level view of the sidewalk. One thing we came up with as we worked through this together was we developed that the city should have a goal of providing 5 feet or greater sidewalk on both sides of collector streets and above. So, you know, that'll be in the plan. That's something that the city is going to work towards. We're going to go through and sort of prioritize some of that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, Chris,
Yeah.
just could you hit again what you mean by a collector street?
Sure, and Charlie could help me out too, but streets in cities are classified based on their function and their kind of traffic volume. Collector streets and higher, so collectors and arterials are ones that tend to be more through streets, like Prince would be, was that an arterial for you guys or a collector?
Minor arterial.
Minor arterial. That'd be a good example of that. What's a good example of a collector?
Church.
Yeah, Church Avenue.
Okay. So those type of streets, they tend to have maybe institutional or commercial uses along them, or they serve residential streets that kind of feed into them. Does that make sense? And the city, I didn't bring it with me, but the city does have a good map of what streets those are. That's how we developed our inventory base.
Okay.
Okay.
And I guess I'll just make a comment, because one thing that seems to jump out at you right away is there's a significant portion of this Santa Fe Drive,
Yeah.
which is a state highway. So that presents challenges of its own, and so I don't know what the actual lineal mileage is there, but that's something that just sort of leaps off the page at you.
Yeah, and if you walk it, you'll see that in quite a few places there are what we call social trails, which are kind of dirt paths where people have been using to get to a bus stop maybe, or to get through a 2-block gap. But yeah, that was one of the streets that we inventoried, and it definitely doesn't.
Even though I don't know that most citizens would think of that as a city street.
Right.
It's certainly within the city limits.
Well, another good example, Santa Fe 85 is a big one, but like Bellevue. Bellevue is your boundary between Inglewood and you, and there are some significant gaps in the sidewalk there that I've got on my list on my next slide, actually, of kind of gaps that we saw that were pretty important. So, is that good? Okay. So,
Chris, let me interrupt you for 1 second. One of the other tasks that we have done this summer, not associated with the bike plan, is we had a seasonal employee inventory every sidewalk in the city on all residential, all streets in Littleton. And his inventory was primarily to look at the condition of the sidewalk and determine where the really hazardous areas are. He toured and inspected every single sidewalk in the city, including all of Trailmark. I will tell you, this employee did it all by bicycle. In 28 days, he traveled on 257 miles doing all the sidewalk inventory.
So we've already met all of our health goals for the year?
He did. And we have it all on computer form, and we have a photograph of almost all those most hazardous locations for sidewalks, so we can work with the property owner to do some repairs in those most hazardous areas. So this included the lower streets, including cul-de-sacs and residential streets, all the way up to arterial streets.
That brings up a question. Do these maps, or do your mileage here, does that include Trailmark?
yeah, that is a good question. No, in fact, Trailmark, I should have said up front, was specifically not a part of the bike and ped plan based on the original scope of work that Dave and Charlie worked out. And you guys can maybe say more about that if you need to, but I think the idea was that it was kind of a separate piece, and sidewalk inventory there looks like it got done this summer. In terms of bike connections, it wasn't really a contiguous piece, I guess, so they said, let's focus our efforts here. So Trailmark was not a part of the plan. Okay. Okay, so the other thing that we looked at were cross locations for crossing improvements, and I know that council has been kind of hot on this topic this year, since there was some interest there, especially legal check prints, I think, Peggy, you mentioned. There were two kind of that jumped out at us based on sort of that interaction in our inventory. It was it doesn't really have a name, but there's a trail crossing right at the top of Jackass Hill. It has poor sight distance to the south, so if you were a car traveling north towards downtown from Mineral, it's pretty hard to tell if there's going to be somebody in the street or not, and when you're crossing, it's hard to know if you're going to have enough time. So that was one, and that was kind of one that was at the top of our list in terms of speed and volumes and kind of sight distance safety things. The other was Lee Gulch at Prince, which if you do an engineering kind of assessment of it, it looks like it's okay. I mean, this visibility, the sight distance is good and everything, but clearly there's been an issue there, and we're kind of trying to figure out why that is. It could be that they're, it's kind of in a curve that goes, it's kind of at the bottom of that curve, and maybe people get lost in the asphalt, So those are two places that we're talking about that are higher priority for us to do some enhanced stuff. And that's what this slide shows. So there are a lot of ways to do these. They're called activated pedestrian crossings, or some people call them enhanced pedestrian crossings. The idea is you see these if you drive around Metro Denver. There are quite a few of these in place. They tend to be at trail crossings or more like high problem locations or school areas, those kind of things. The way it works is you see on the left picture there's the usual pedestrian crossing sign, and it has 3 lights in it, LED lights that are kind of real bright but use low power. And there's a push button. If you look in the bottom left, you'll see there's a button just like at a traffic signal. And what a pedestrian would do is come up and push the button. When they push the button, the lights start flashing, And the picture on the right kind of shows what that looks like to a motorist as they approach. Those lights the signs would be flashing. Pedestrian standing on the sidewalk. Pedestrian still has to look and make sure that they're not going to step out directly in front of a car, because the laws of physics still apply, right? And but this is a reminder that once the pedestrian's in the crosswalk, they have the legal right-of-way, that cars are legally obligated to stop. And even though that's the case, sometimes people need a little more reinforcement to pay attention. So these are the kind of things we're talking about at those two places. You'll see a lot of configurations of these, but these are pretty common. Is there any questions?
What color lights?
The lights are yellow, so they're like a warning light. And that's the idea, that it complies with sort of people's understanding. So like red lights are stop, green lights are go, yellow are be careful, slow down. And it matches up with a lot of the other things you guys have in the city. If you look at the elementary schools, you'll see the yellow flashing lights that come on at those crossings. Yeah, you know, there are some, what do you call them, like informational devices, but not like a do not walk or walk. Those devices to traffic engineers and to legal people imply a sort of an assigned right-of-way. So when it says walk, that means you can go, and you don't have to look. You don't have to do anything. If somebody hits you, it's their fault. And at this case, it's not really a stop light, right? It's a warning. Yeah, right. And so, yeah, but there, one of the things you'll see there, I didn't show the picture. I showed it at the summer meeting. So there's all sorts of levels of these. There's one, Boulder tends to do these really over the top things. And so they've got one that crosses a 4-lane arterial with median divided and with bike lanes and everything, and actually talks to the person. So you hope you can hear it, I guess. But you push the button. There's a visual indication that the lights are flashing that you can see. And it says, you know, the crosswalk's activated, proceed with caution, don't step in front of cars, those kind of things. So it's all sorts of levels, but that's the idea. And they've been pretty effective, which is why you see a lot of cities doing them. They've had really good compliance rates with these and good safety improvements at problem locations. Any more questions about those things? Okay. Okay, so some key gaps. Here's just a list of 6 that kind of jumped out on more major roads. And, you know, we don't have to go through all of them, but you can see that Bellevue east of Windermere we talked about a little bit. Prince south of Ridge Road on the east side. Barry, which is downtown here, just west of Prince. Peakview west of Gallup. County line east of the Highland Canal, so there's a sidewalk that stops like 100 feet before the trail crossing, and there's a guardrail there, and people are forced to go out in the street, which is something that we'd like to fix. And Platte Canyon, southeast of Mineral on the east side, there's no sidewalk there, and there's a, what do you call them, a differently abled community. I don't know what the right term is, but they're deaf, right? No, blind. And right now they have to walk on the shoulder, and so there's a lot of debate, and I know in that community about should they have special accommodations or not, but the city would like to put sidewalk in that area anyway. So those are some that jump out. I'm sure there's a bunch more, and I'd love to hear your guys' priorities or ones you notice every day. Maybe we can do that now if we have a little bit of time, or we can do it anytime you want. You can give me a call, or we can talk on the phone.
The only other one that I'm aware of, Chris, that I've received some inquiry on is the sidewalks on the south side of Ridge.
Yeah. Okay.
Or the absence of, I should say.
Right.
Yes, it should be the absence of.
Right.
And Charlie's aware of that, whether he shared it with you or not.
Yeah, Charlie has shared all those things with me, and we kind of try to pick a couple that were on maybe either downtown area or on a busier street. Prince is busy, and Ridge is also busy. So
Berry Avenue is the only location in downtown Littleton where we have sidewalk missing. And so in order to continue to encourage pedestrian activity, that would be a high priority for installation of a new sidewalk. And there are some challenges there because there's some extensive landscaping on the south side of Berry Avenue, just west of Prince, that make it challenging.
Just an editorial comment that I don't know if it'll be in the plan or not, but there's challenges to all of these.
Yeah, that's why they're not done,
It's
right?
not- so I don't know if you're going to have a challenges list in the plan, or maybe a footnote or something, for example, where the geometry's not there, or where you're going to have competing interests with roadway widths. The only other comment I have about it is you started at the first, Chris, saying that a big focus was on how to make connectors.
Yeah, that's true.
Connecting to trail systems and so forth. So in terms of rating a priority, if there's some of these, there's a pedestrian, there's a sidewalk on one side of the street, but then is it just as a high priority? If the connection is there, if you cross the street, is the connection just as high a priority on the other side of the street? I mean, Prince is an example. You do have sidewalk on the west side of Prince, all along St. Mary's and along the entire stretch there. So how, in terms of connecting to something, say like Lee Gulch, how high is the priority to have the sidewalk on the east side of the street also?
Especially at bike paths, and we see people working on the bike paths.
Yeah, so, I don't, just for whoever's going to be putting the plan together, whether there'll be some text or talk about challenges and where there's very, very tight rights of way. I don't know if you'll include that in the plan or not. Just a couple of thoughts for you.
Yeah, but related to that is if it has a curb but no sidewalk, it's a little different, I think, because some people like to run you off onto this dreadful edge of street when there's no curb. They want to.
Right. You also have, as Charlie said, there's sections where you already have landscaping or trees.
Right.
So it's just not a simple matter of just going in there and just sort of sketching out, 5 feet for a sidewalk and say, here we go. I mean, there's going to be some complications.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask a question. When you measure a 5-foot sidewalk and you're dealing with Hollywood curbs, are you talking about only the flat surface being 5 feet?
Yeah,
Or do
a lot of, I think you're talking about those kind of rollover curbs, is that what you call
Yes.
Hollywood curbs? Almost all of those were less than 5 feet, and we didn't include the curb in those measurements. On what we call a barrier curb, so the straight up and down ones, we'd include from the face of curb all the way out. But most measurements, so the sidewalk in the city generally is 3 feet if it has that Hollywood-style curb. That's pretty common. It tends to be 5 feet 6 inches if it's got a barrier curb straight up and down, because the top of the curb is 6 inches wide. So
Some of
those are-
these you've got in here indicated as being 5 feet. I walk a lot, and I would have never guessed they're 5 feet when I walk down them.
Yeah, so we did go out and do a pretty extensive inventory. This data, I've truthed it pretty good, but there could still be a mistake in there. If you see something that jumps out at you, let me know and I'll go check it out again. But yeah, 5 feet isn't as wide as you think. It sounds wide, but especially if it's attached to the road. Yes?
I don't know if this is going to be part of your report or if it could be, but in light of like what Jim was talking about, that if we have some areas where there isn't a sidewalk or it's too narrow, but the cost of putting stuff like that in can get pretty high, particularly when you're looking at the number of miles you're looking at here. Is there a way to provide for safe use of that area, bipeds? And I know bikes, you can mark some bike lanes on the road, you can do sharrows, but for peds, is there anything being done or that can be done that you know of that would provide for safe passage? And marking streets is a lot cheaper than building a sidewalk, and if we have to prioritize what we're doing, if you can mark a street that allows people to recognize that pets have a right to be here, there's no sidewalk, they have, and probably can't be 5 feet, but something that would kind of indicate to motorists at least that this is a shared road. Is that even being done, or is that just crazy?
That, I've seen that implementation in a few places. It's not very common for PEDs, and it tends to have some sort of physical, not just a stripe, but maybe those flexible delineators. You've seen the posts that kind of go over. So I've seen those in places. The new Asheville Bike Guide, if there's a bike facility next to that, they don't prefer to have those kind of raised things because people catch their handlebars on pedals. So we'd have to look, I think, on a case-by-case basis and say, could you do it safely, and does it make sense? I know in a couple cases, staff and I were looking, and they've put paved area behind sort of the shoulder without a curb as a sidewalk. And one of the issues you get into a sidewalk is if there's curb, that means there's drainage, and where there's drainage, there's pipes, and all that stuff gets really expensive. So, yeah, you're right. So, I don't have a great answer. People have done it. It wouldn't be the preferred solution, I don't think. If you had a critical gap that you had a problem with today that you couldn't afford to fix today, you might do something like that.
I'm thinking like a temporary thing. If the goal eventually becomes that we want to, provide safe ped passage on all our streets, then, but in the short term, what can we do that could improve safety without costing fortune? Not much.
See what other cities have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only thing I could think of.
Well, I can do a little looking into that, and maybe that could be something in the plan about options, like interim options or something. Okay. Okay. So, are there any other? I'm gonna move on to bicycles next. So, are there any other pedestrian things? I know I'm kind of probably running long on time. So, okay. So let's talk bicycle system. So this is kind of in the same format as the PED piece. So we inventoried the existing facilities. We got a lot of mapping from the city. Went out and checked things in the field. Looked at gaps and obstacles in the system today. And one of the goals that we developed was provide additional on-street facilities to complement this excellent trail system and to link destinations. So like we talked about in the beginning. And we identified enhancement opportunities and tools. So what you have today, mostly you have bike lanes, and there are about 16-ish miles, a little more than 16, I think 16.8 miles of bike lanes. It's really like 33 if you add up both sides of the street, so it depends how you look at it. But there isn't a real cohesive system, so there's not a lot of guide or destination signing. There's gaps in that system. So I'll hand out the same kind of maps that I had for the sidewalks for the bikes. And then I'll kind of run through a little. I think there's 10 copies. So. By the way, these materials, and I don't know if anybody's watching on TV, I'll have up on the city website.
Tons are watching.
Yeah. So I'll get them up on the city website pretty quick here, so everybody that's interested can kind of see what the draft materials look like in the plan and everything. It's just kind of small to put up on the big screen here. So, okay, so what you see there is existing bike lanes. It's right around 17, and there's 20 miles in the plan of proposed new facilities and new on-street type facilities. So you'd end up with around 37 miles. And the proposed facilities by type, they're kind of at the bottom. So a little bit more bike lane, about 3 miles. These things called sharrows, which I went through a little bit before, but I'll talk about in my next slide about what that is. It's a way of marking the pavement. And if you've been on Rio Grande out here, just by the building here, you've seen them in practice. And then bike route. And bike route to us means that it would be a signed route, but it wouldn't necessarily have any stripes or sharrows on it. So it would be a way to go that the streets are low volume enough and safe enough that it kind of works. And I arranged those maps in the same way. It's northwest is on the first page there, and I'll go through that with you quickly. Let's go to the last page of that, because the last page has the legend, and that'll kind of help you think about it here. So what we've shown here is kind of, we showed the existing trail system, so that's all the great trails that run through Littleton. Existing bike lanes, which are the solid yellow. Proposed bike lanes are dashed. Like on this map, the last ones are in the southeast. You'll see at the bottom at South Park, there kind of are dashed yellow lines there. Proposed trails are actually a couple proposed trails that were kind of on the books already, like City Ditch Trail that's getting constructed, Slaughterhouse Gulch, those kind of things that are shown in the plan maps. Proposed sharrows and proposed bike routes. So proposed sharrows are purple and bike routes are blue. The other thing you see on here are these red dots. And I call that intersection improvement, but it means a lot of different things. In some cases it means doing like that enhanced pedestrian crossing we saw before. In other places it means adding bicycle detection. So a lot of times traffic signals have to be especially if they're on video, if they're they have these loops in the ground that detect cars, they have to be tuned right, and bikes need to know where to be, so the traffic signal knows they're waiting. So I'll show you the pictures of these things. So bike lane, everybody kind of knows what that is. You guys have implemented them a little different here. Right now you have the stripe, but generally not the symbol. And that was more for kind of cost reasons at the time it was implemented. They are signed. You'll see it says no parking, bike lane is a pretty common sign around town. But that's what a typical bike lane looks like on the left there. A sharrow, so that's the one right outside the building here in the middle on Rio Grande. And what is that thing and what does it mean? This was an idea that came up about 10 years ago in the traffic engineering community that in some places, like Rio Grande's a great example, it's not really wide enough to have a vehicle lane and a bike lane. There's not enough physical space. The vehicle lanes tend to be 10 to 12 feet wide and bike lanes are 5 feet, so you need a little more width. On facilities that sort of met certain criteria, like they didn't have really high speed limits, say over like 40 miles an hour or 35 miles an hour, had a good, not like super high traffic volumes, maybe, 5 to 15,000 kind of average daily traffic, so cars a day in that kind of range, like a collector, minor arterial kind of range. They tried these symbols, and they said, well, let's put this bike symbol with this little chevron on top of it, little hat on it, and we'll do some research studies. So the feds did some research on this. They implemented a few places around the country. Austin, Texas was one of them. And they looked at were there more bicyclists on those roads after than before. So that would imply that they were more comfortable and knew it as a route better. Did motorists give them more space when they passed or change their behavior when they passed bikes differently after than before? And what they found is that they were pretty effective at attracting bicyclists to the roads that they were on, so the roads that they felt were good for them. And motorists gave significantly more passing distance, and right around, the average was right near 3 feet, which is our current state law, 3 feet to pass. So, and that was a big change. They were getting like average between 1 and 2 feet before the implementation of the sharrows. So anyway, it was real effective, real positive device, and a lot less expensive to install and maintain than bike lanes, and a lot of the good benefits. So we're looking at those in quite a few streets. And then on the far right there, you'll see what's called a bike detector. This one happens to be in a kind of a bike path as it comes up to an intersection. But you see there's those two kind of longitudinal lines with a bike symbol in the middle. The idea is that if you put your bike wheels on those lines, there's a detector in the pavement that'll detect your bike and give you a green light when it's your turn. And bicyclists have a real hard time at traffic signals, especially bike routes are a lot of times on lower volume streets, and they'll come up, say, like, what's a good example here? A good example would be Bannock, kind of up at Littleton Boulevard, I guess would be a good one. And lower volume side street, busy Main Street. And the way it works now is a bike comes up there, it doesn't have to be a car that comes up with them. They have to get off their bike, walk over, push the button, get back on their bike, wait their turn, and then ride across the intersection or walk. And what this would do would be a marking in the street that would say, if there aren't any cars, sit here, and the signal will change for you. So does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Does Cheryl's make sense to everybody?
A packed snow, will it still be detecting?
If-
Packed snow and ice?
Yeah,
Because there are people that bike.
yes, absolutely. So I'm not the city traffic engineer, but we talked, Craig, I know you, Craig Fassler, he's your kind of on-call engineer for traffic, and then Tim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim. Anyway, we talked through this, but the way that, not to get too into detail, but it doesn't have any problem usually, these loops in the pavement with snow or water. Sometimes the new bikes that are really fancy, that are a lot of carbon fiber and stuff, it'll have a little tougher time detecting them. They have to be tuned a little better, but there's usually enough metal in the rims of the wheels to sort of trigger that. And the weather doesn't tend to be too big a factor, so. Okay. Okay, so a couple other things I just want to talk about, concepts. Road diet. So if you look at this packet that I just handed out with bikes, and you look at the first page of the map, you'll see kind of in the center right, Centennial Drive. Centennial Drive is a road we're interested in because it connects this east-west gap that we found. And that road has 2 lanes in each direction, has low traffic volumes, and that would be a candidate. We haven't decided that this is what we're going to do, but it would be a candidate to do what's called a road diet, which would be to kind of take one of the lanes away, put a bike lane in, and kind of widen everything up a little bit so that it looks like a 2-lane road with bike lanes and turn lanes. And that's one way you can go and get bike lanes in if the traffic volumes are conducive to it. So sometimes roads get built bigger and then the traffic doesn't develop. So that'd be what a road diet means. We have a pretty we're going to have a pretty big route and destination signage program. Charlie showed me the kind of distressed look signs that you guys are looking at for destinations in town. Kind of try to tie into that theme with if you were riding your bike on Prince, right, and you wanted to get to, well, Little's Creek, I guess would be a great example. It's not signed very well. You might do some destination signage that says to Mary Carter Greenway, those kind of things. Bike parking, I heard that you guys were walking around yesterday, right? Bike parking downtown, if you look to the light rail station, it's very busy. And a lot of people bike to the station. You'll see all the bike racks are full. There's a rack, I think, in Vega Park that gets utilized even. And I know that there's been, we'd like to have some more bike parking downtown. And there might be a kind of a tie-in with another group in the city. Is that true?
You want to say something?
The Fine Arts Committee is kind of looking at functional art.
Okay.
So, and bike parking would be something that would be more functional art, particularly downtown. And we did tour around Monday, I think we were down there. And it's interesting because the sidewalks are already really full. We have trees, we have benches, we have trash cans, we have pots of flowers and stuff like that. You have to keep a 5-foot for handicap. In fact, while we were walking around, a gentleman in a wheelchair came by, and it was kind of interesting to see how well he could use our sidewalks because of that 5-foot. But when you don't have that opportunity, then it creates a problem. So it was interesting. We found some places that were perfect, and then a lot of places that were just impossible for bike parking. But it was an interesting journey. I mean, definitely there's places that they could be used, and I think the committee got a lot of information out of that too. So
That's great. It'd be great if there was a tie between those two because maybe it kind of helps both areas. So anyway, I just wanted to ask about that and see how it's going. Mapping. So part of this contract is to develop better mapping that'll be on the city's website that bicycle users can get and know how to get around town, and an education program, especially with school-age kids. So,
Chris, when you're talking
Yeah.
mapping, you mean also extending it so that, like Google Maps or whatever, so if someone has a chance to possibly be in a position to use an electronic device?
yeah, so, and in fact, if you go on that, probably use on your phone. If you go there, it has the bike thing, you can actually see all the trail system down here pretty good already, pretty well. So, yeah, right now, I'll say just a little bit about that. The city doesn't have a huge GIS, Geographic Information System database of facilities. Mostly it's AutoCAD-based, which is an engineering-based program. And so it's harder to share that information across data platforms. So like what Google does is they grab all the GIS information from cities and then it shows up on their maps. So this is something we've been talking about. South Suburban Park and Rec uses GIS for their mapping, and that's why it's on the maps. So we are trying to figure out exactly how to bridge that gap. Okay. So the last few slides here are about what is it we're going to do right away. So there's this plan. There's a lot of stuff in it. There's a lot of sidewalk gaps. There's a lot of bike routes and things like this. We have a little bit of money. It's Charlie keeps telling me it's, we're not sure exactly, but it's $35,000 to $45,000.
That's a typical answer from Charlie, by the way.
Okay. It's on the order of $35,000 to $45,000. And so you can imagine, as we were talking about with sidewalk, what kind of things can you buy that would make a difference with that much money? You can't buy a lot of sidewalk for $35,000 to $45,000. You can buy quite a bit of paint. You can buy quite a few signs. You can do a few education things and that kind of stuff. So anyway, this is all from the grant, so this isn't city general funds. This was grant money. So the general items overall are improved mapping, route and destination signing, so we'll have bike routes and how do you get to places you want to go. Bike parking downtown, which we just talked about, maybe there's an overlap there that would help us out. Plan on an educational video and materials related to the new things you're going to see. So what is a Shero? What are these bike detectors? What am I supposed to do when I see these things? Other cities have done similar things, like Fort Collins has a good video up about Sheros that we kind of build on. And then some back-to-school packets. Those are the overall things. The specific things, the Jackass Hill activated pedestrian crossing. Those that's one of our bigger ticket items. They're like $10,000 plus or minus. So that's kind of a big deal. The bicycle facilities we're talking about, and I'll hand this out for your guys' info. So this is another set of maps, but they're focused on specific routes and things. That gives you a better idea of what we're talking about here. So if you just kind of open it up and look, you'll see that first page shows this Prince Jackass Hill, and you kind of see the red dots at Lee Gulch at Prince and at the top of Jackass Hill. And there's another project there down that bottom left corner that I'll talk about in a second. And as you just go through these, you'll see that they match up with my list there about things that we think are important to do early or soon. And that I'm working through all the costing, and it kind of depends on if the city ends up hiring a contractor to do this or if they do it with in-house staff and things like that in terms of how much we can get done. So going through workload, is there enough time? All this money has to be spent by the middle of March of next year. So things like that. Anyway, this is just for your information so you can kind of see some of the higher priority things we're talking about. I do want to talk about this Bowles, I think, is a really important one to talk about. Bowles was a real, something that jumped out right away. There's a real east-west gap between people that live west of Santa Fe or west of Federal on Bowles and that want to get east. Even to the trail is tough, to the Mary Carter Greenway. And so we look through, and you'll see in that pack, I think it's the second page, shows this. There's a couple of things we found. There's this Bowles alternate route that we're proposing as a different way to get, and it uses Thule, and then there's a little park kind of in the northwest corner where Lowell and Bowles come together. Comes through, and it kind of just stays sort of parallel to Bowles, but just north of it. We think if we sign that and do some education that folks that live there will use that a little more. widening bowls or changing bowls was kind of deemed to be pretty hard to do, and especially with our grant money. So anyway, that's important, and that kind of leads me into the next piece. So, So there's things that we have money to do, and we're going to work through this list and do as many of these as we can with the money we have. And then there's these other high priority recommendations. These aren't included in the grant funding, so they would be a future city. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to go back to your
Sure.
Bowles alternate bike
Yeah.
route, just to give you a little bit of feedback, is to handle and be consistent with some of your grant providers or partners, excuse me, is to make sure that there's the connection to the school, the middle school, via that. It's not shown on the map. And I will tell you, there's a good way to go on Berry, and there's not the good way, which is going east on Berry is downhill, going west on Berry is uphill. That used to be the way I would actually travel then through the neighborhoods to get to the Mary Carter. So the thing is going south on the Mary Carter is the one that's the real challenge. Going north on the Mary Carter, you can kind of get through the neighborhoods and kind of do okay.
Right. If you look at, that's a great point. If you look at the very next page in that packet, you'll see I call this the Berry Prince bike route. Mm-hmm. This is a pretty, that talks about some of those facilities you just talked about Berry. But there's the two middle schools, Centennial and Goddard, are on Berry. It's an important street for east-west connections. And it happens to hook up, crosses Federal at a place that's conducive to doing an enhanced pedestrian crossing in the future. It's kind of not near a traffic signal. It's already median divided. And then it hooks into downtown if you go up Centennial down Prince. So for commuters and for improvements for school kids to get back and forth, that's a pretty important one. Thank you. Okay, so that said, these aren't included in the grant funding, but they're really important. And the most important one, based on what we saw, is this Federal Bowles intersection. So if you've ever been through there, you know Federal comes down and tees at Bowles, and there's a lot of southbound right-turning traffic. And the intersection is just slightly skewed, so the right turn is pretty easy. It's not dead straight. It's kind of off a little bit. The city's worked really hard at signing and striping and with the traffic signal and trying to discourage these sort of rolling rights. So a lot of people don't stop. They pull up and roll through, or they pull up and stop, but they, if you can imagine, you pull up and stop and you look left to see if there's a gap that you can go, and you're not looking over here, which is where a pedestrian's coming from. And then the pedestrian has the walk signal. They look. They can't make eye contact with you because you're looking that way. They say, well, I think it's probably okay. And they walk, and that's right when you go. And you didn't know they were there because you're trying to look, and they didn't know you were going to go. So it's a real safety problem, and it's also a real east-west connectivity problem. That intersection is a real detriment to getting over to downtown and to the Greenway. So one of the things, I don't have the diagram here, but one of the things we're talking about is making some intersection improvements, which would make sort of, instead of having this right that comes up and is supposed to stop and turn, make it a free right, and with a crosswalk and an island, so that when pedestrians, imagine you're a pedestrian walking east, you can walk up and you can see the cars coming and if they're going to be in the right lane turning right, and you can make eye contact with that person and see if they're going to stop for you. And if they slow down, then you can walk up to the island and push the button, and it's a lot safer. So that's basically what we're talking about there, is some minor intersection improvements. Should help safety for PEDs pretty significantly. It'll also help capacity for the intersection. Also help people that are breaking the law today that don't really want to or intend to, I guess. Maybe they do, I don't know. But they won't get a ticket later. So anyway, that's important. Other Lee Gulch crossings, so especially the one at Prince. That's kind of the Jackass Hill one was the kind of top of our list based on an engineering assessment. Lee Gulch is kind of the next one down. And then I mentioned this has come up in a lot of public meetings. There's sort of this connection to the light rail station from to top of Jackass Hill. So if you look at that first map in this packet here, this last one is handed out, if you look at the bottom left corner, you'll see how, kind of go through that, on that street, and then there's a trail with some steps that we're proposing to go down there, because people use it all the time now, and when it rains, it gets muddy, and they slip on their butts, and they're not happy, and so anyway, that was important to connect there. And then missing sidewalk in the downtown area was kind of the next one. Okay, so what happens next? Charlie said in this beginning, we want to finalize by September. We're going to have a comment period through all of September, and it'll be up on the website and everything. And we have a mailing list, an email list, and also some places we can put postcards up, and we can put copies of the plan in the libraries and at the rec centers, those kind of things. I guess Charlie was talking to me about having this adopted by council at the October 4th meeting. Is that right? That's what we'd be shooting for. And then implementation has to be done by mid-March, and you guys will keep working towards those high-priority items as funding is available. So I took way too much time, but it was a lot of fun.
I do have a question or comment. On Prince at Lee Gulch with that one. So this has been in my head during this whole thing. You're saying that proposed thing you're going to put there would have flashing yellow lights?
Yeah.
And isn't part of the problem that just says caution, but it doesn't say make your car stop if somebody is already in the crosswalk at a reasonable time?
Yeah, you're correct. It doesn't say, it's not like a stoplight that has a red light and then you have to stop or a stop sign. There is, if you've been out there a bunch of times, I'm sure, right at the school, but I don't know how far there is, 150 feet, 200 feet. It's not where the trail is, but at the school itself, there's that kind of device that is a traffic signal, and it's specifically designed so that kids can push the button.
Well, yeah, but some people who are crossing there are not going to the school, they're going over
Right.
to the park.
So, yeah, but you're right, they're two different things, and we aren't proposing a traffic signal at this, and there's a couple reasons. One would be, we haven't gone through a warrant study. The city would go through and say, are there enough cars and peds that the signal's warranted and that you could install it legally, with sort of defensibility, I guess.
But
The other would,
it's flashing, right? And it would only flash when activated.
that's right.
So why can't it flash red?
Well, so it could flash red, but according to the Man Uniform Traffic Control Devices,
What's flashing red mean?
yeah, they don't want to mix their messages, so red means stop, and we aren't, I know what you're saying, you want to have it be a stop, a signal, right?
Well,
You feel that would be safer.
The student who had so much excitement occur and wrote this incredible letter,
Yeah, I read
to
that,
us.
yeah.
the car stopped for her, but the car behind her, behind that car didn't stop.
Right.
And, there might as well not, in my mind, spend any money to do something different if we're not going to do something that's more significant.
Well, if the car doesn't stop for the car in front of them, then the car's probably not going to stop for the car in front of them that has a traffic light there.
Well, we don't know that, but, part of what she had seen and sent the picture of was something that apparently people did pay attention to because it was a more significant, you better stop thing.
So when go ahead.
We're a half hour over on
Yeah.
this.
I just would like
Yeah.
a little more consideration.
The only thing I would say in the letter, she did, the young lady did talk about these specific kind of devices that she thought would help solve her problem too. So anyway, I can talk to you about it after. I've taken enough time. I sure appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you.
You can always feel free to get in touch with me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
All right, next item is Youth Commission.
And Council, Marissa Johnson is going to present this item to you. She's been a legal intern in the office this summer, and Marissa is a Littleton native, so she knows a little bit about Littleton youth, and we'll let you know what she found out.
And We can congratulate Marissa as she's has changed from one school to another. That's going to be, instead of having to head back to Minneapolis, she's going to be continuing her studies here in Colorado. So.
Good evening, everybody. How are you all doing tonight? Okay. Now get plugged in. All right. Well, I'm here to talk about the Youth Commission or other ways we can involve the youth. As everyone mentioned, my name is Marissa Johnson. I'm from the area here. Let's see if we can get the technology to work for us. If we push the buttons properly. Excellent. We're good to go. All right. So Councilmember Cernanek asked me at the beginning of the summer to look into ways we could engage Littleton's youth. And to do this, I did a bit of research. I looked at some publications by the National League of Cities, as well as CML, and I looked at press releases from municipalities that had found ways to engage youth in their own communities. I also visited a few sites, the Centennial and Lone Trees Youth Commissions. Tonight, what we're going to be looking at is a little bit of background, the purpose for engaging the youth, as well as some factors for success, and then a few of the options. There's three main ones. The first is the continuation of our current outreach. The second is a Youth in Government Day. The third is to create a youth commission, or we could do a combination of the above. If you have any questions, please feel free to jump in at any point in time. All right, so we want to start with a question. Speaking of questions, why should we bother to reach out to the youth of Littleton? Main reason, of course, is voter apathy. That's what this chart is here on the left-hand side. You'll see these statistics come from the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement. That's a research group at Tufts University. In 1996, fewer than 40% of voters ages 18 to 24 voted in the presidential election. In 2008, that number jumped up to 48.5%, but then it fell again to about 24% in last year's midterm elections. That means less than 1 in 4 persons ages 18 to 24 is voting. This is kind of a big problem because it means that our city council is not able to represent everyone who lives in Littleton if they're not spending time voting for you folks. So what we want to do is try to find a way to remedy that. So we want to engage the youth by teaching them the importance of local and state government, showing them that their voice really does matter. This is a benefit to them because they are the future leaders of our community. We can help them to develop skills for their future as employers, as employees, as legislators. We can teach them skills like leadership, teamwork, and compromise. Also, we can help them to become more familiar with Littleton, build communication here with the city center. They can know exactly why Littleton is such a fantastic place, as I know everyone agrees, right? And when it's time for them to raise their own kids, they'll probably want to return back to Littleton, knowing exactly why it's so fantastic. And they won't even need to consult Bloomberg Business Week for that information. All right, so this is not just a benefit to the youth. It's not just stopping voter apathy. This is also a benefit to the city. When we increase a communication with the youth, then the city can better understand their needs and also direct improved services that are directed toward them. The city also gains a more vibrant electorate, people who are more willing to engage in voting, in local volunteer work, and also in elections. All right, so moving on to factors for success tonight. There's just a few I wanted to mention. The first one is to discuss about creating partnerships among local governments, the local schools, and local business. Each of these groups presents its own knowledge and experience with working with the youth, and they can bring their own abilities to help the youth achieve their own potential. Another factor is to create authentic experiences for the youth. As any teacher can tell you, the kids can tell when we're not giving it to them straight. So we need to give the kids real projects, not just busy work, to test their own skills, to help them develop their leadership skills. We need to view youth engagement as something that's not merely good for them, but as an authentic and good project for the city to engage in, viewing the youth as collaborators and contributors. The next factor is structure. Students are willing to spread their wings and fly, but they need a little bit of framework to work within. So if we focus on giving them guidelines and far-reaching expectations without narrowing that sphere too much and limiting them to artificial barriers, we can allow the youth to fly. The last factor will be support, talking about investment in training, both for adults and for the students, investment in funding, of course, and also finding adults who are willing and excited to work with the youth and who support the vision of youth engagement. All right, let's move to the options. Option number 1 is to maintain our current level of services. We've got a bunch of those listed up on the screen. I just highlighted a few. Greater Littleton Youth Initiative, they offer several programs that reach out to the youth and their families, such as the Nurse Family Partnership, which focuses on teaching parenting skills to teen mothers, functional family therapy, bringing mental health services to students, and also the Incredible Years program at the Village, which teaches social skills to toddlers. That's just a few of the things that GLYI does. The next group, the South Suburban and Littleton Public Schools groups, they offer sports opportunities, volunteer work, band, other school programs, and clubs for students to become involved. There's also great things at the library and the museum. They've got fantastic family events and the summer reading program that everyone loves. All these programs are fantastic. All of them deserve support, but none of them is specifically oriented towards civics. The next two options are focused on local government. The next option is the Youth in Government Day. This is an all-day, one-time annual event. I guess it's not one-time and annual, is it? An annual event, one time per year. This involves having a lecture on the legislative process and lunch with a keynote speaker. It's an extremely flexible option in that you can create different templates and combine the templates to have a unique experience each year. Just a real quick description of some of those templates. The first one is the project-based version. Here, the city staff member in charge of planning will find a project that is interesting to the youth. It could be something youth-oriented, such as curfew, or it could be something a little more fun. I know that one community in Arizona looked at the very serious issue of whether ATVs should be allowed on city streets. It could be something a little more serious, too, such as Tabor or perhaps the Comprehensive City Plan. The Youth in Government Day project can be used to work towards social studies curriculum objectives to help students practice their research skills. They take the issue, they do some research, they have a discussion of the issues, then they formulate a plan, which they run by city officials for refining, and finally they present their ideas to council. In a second version of the Youth in Government Day, students have an opportunity to follow a city employee for a few hours. They hold roundtable discussions and then have a chance to play the part of the person whom they shadowed that day in a mock city council meeting. They then work on an ordinance and hopefully they'll be able to pass something, which they then present to you folks, the real city council. The final model of the Youth in Government Day is the lecture presentation model. Students have the opportunity here to listen to various sources, the heads of city departments, folks like you, the nice council members here in Littleton, as well as professors of public administration or political science. They have a chance to tour the city center and they can talk to the professors or the lecturers and presenters in a roundtable situation. The entire concept of the Youth in Government Day is to tailor it to the situation as is necessary. Any of these templates can be combined to make it a unique experience. This is a simple and condensed way to introduce the youth to our local government. All right, the last option. Option number 3 is the Youth Commission, the full-blown shindig, if you will. This is modeled after our current boards and commissions process. We take 5 to 9 members who live within city limits. They'll be between ages 13 and 19 or 18, depending on when they graduate high school, basically 8th grade and up. They serve for 2-year terms, and they're selected through an application process. They spend their terms focusing on policy recommendations and also service projects. A little more detail here. At each meeting, they'll have an opportunity to listen to city employees and take a tour of the city buildings and different city facilities in order to understand how the city functions. Also, a youth commissioner will be assigned to attend each city council meeting and then report back to the youth commission what it is that you folks are doing so they can have a better comprehensive understanding of what goes on in Littleton. Again, the students will focus on policy issues, making recommendations to council. For example, in Lone Tree, the Youth Commission worked with Douglas County Commissioners and the town of Parker to standardize curfew throughout the area. Other Youth Commission events include charity drives. I know that Lone Tree also focused on a books and media drive for Skyridge Hospital patients. Of course, food drives for those in need. They can focus on volunteering at city events and planning city events. Tomorrow night's Carousel of Music, for instance, would be a great opportunity for the youth to get involved in. I know everyone's excited about that. And of course, they can create their own special events. There's a picture of Centennial's Battle of the Bands, an event that was completely planned, created, and a concept completely implemented by the Youth Commission there in Centennial. All right, a quick recap. We've looked at the benefits of increasing youth involvement. We've looked at 3 options for doing so. This is an initial breakdown of costs. If we maintain our current level of services, option 1 in the top set there, No change to the amount of time required, no change to the costs. If we look at option 2, the Youth and Government Day, we're asking 1 day from the youth and about $5,000 in staff time and other costs. That estimate comes from Canyon City's 2011, this last April's Youth and Government Day. And then the third option is a youth commission. The students meet 2 to 3 times per month. The staff time is 8 to 15 hours. That varies a lot depending on what sort of projects the youth are working on. For example, putting together a battle of the bands requires quite a bit more staff time than a basic meeting. We're looking at $5,000 to $10,000 per year there. Now, I mentioned in passing that these options could be combined. Of course, we'd want to maintain our current level of services. But perhaps we start out with a Youth and Government Day, kind of get our toes wet in youth involvement, maybe branch out to a youth commission, and perhaps the youth commissioners can be utilized to help with the planning of the Youth and Government Day. Okay, so that's it. I really appreciate your time tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
You're talking high school students here, right?
Yes, I should have defined that. So maybe 7th, 8th, or high school, older students who are not quite as busy at school just yet. If you've got somebody who's on football and track and drama, there's probably not going to be a lot of space for them. We're looking at people who are younger, not quite as involved, 13 and up.
I guess ultimately, have you had any conversations with any of the target schools to get some feedback in terms of their interest in participation?
Okay, well, it's the middle of summer, so there's not too many people around. However, I did talk to the assistant principal for curriculum at Powell Middle School. She expressed a lot of interest in a Youth and Government Day. Apparently, she had done that at the high school level, even having a Supreme Court, a mock Supreme Court experience. So there's some interest in there. I know that Powell Middle School, for instance, requires their students to track down someone and shadow them for the day as part of their career curriculum. So that could be a way we could work into that.
Yeah, I'll just add, before the end of the year, which is before Marissa was involved in that, Mike McShay is the one who runs the civics program over at Littleton High, and also a few of the other schools. I can't remember who at each of them, but we can look them up. When we had our breakfast with the student leaders, expressed interest in something. And having some connection that's not just the breakfast once a year.
Great. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a couple of comments. The Colorado Municipal League has put out a civics program that they're trying to get teachers interested in to do some of the things that you just talked about in your early slides about not having a civic interest by the youth. And that's been launched now for, I think it's in its 2nd year, maybe 3rd year. They're still struggling trying to get teachers involved in doing some of that. The second comment is that about a year ago, the Business Industry Affairs did a survey of all the communities around that had youth surveys. And so if we could probably have that resurrected again to give us a reminder of what was going on in the communities.
That sounds fantastic. It would be very good to get everybody on board if possible. All right, I know time's short. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Real quick question.
Sure, go for it.
Me personally, I think the government, one-day government access kind of thing would be good. I guess the question is who's going to own this project, or what are the next steps, or?
I've created about a 45-page manual that that if you'd like, I can email. He's
serious.
So, and that explains further steps that we would take if we're interested in this. This is just to give you a little bit of a taste.
Yeah,
If
if
you'd like, I can
council's
email
interested in
to
that,
you.
we could brainstorm it. This is nicely done, Marissa, by
Thank you.
very succinct. And
I guess that's the issue, is if there's interest, somebody ought to take the next steps, otherwise we'll move on to other things.
Well, if there's interest, it should be presented, in my opinion, at budget, because I'm suspecting that this year's or 2012's budget is going to be a difficult budget with 2011. I mean, you remember the part of the way that we made expenditures match revenues were some of these one-time things like transferring the permit plan balance into the general funds. So I think if the council wants to do this, this should be something that's put on its list of things that it wants to do and evaluate that when you're looking at the money, because everything takes money.
Peggy first.
I think we might be able to capitalize on something that is already happening. We have Eagle Scouts come to council for badges and so forth. We have troops coming to council. Some of these troops are connected through churches, which might have more connection. So maybe we can see if we can leverage some of the interest that we already have through that and through the high school civics classes, just to get some more informal things going, but gearing up a little bit more. And I couldn't see that that would necessarily take any money, but just a little bit of liaison, talking to people. But, I mean, what you did is super, super.
And from my perspective, one of the things I'd like to encourage staff to do is to take a look at some of the creative approaches that some of the other jurisdictions have done, where it may have involved staff time, seeing if someone has an interest to take something like this as both an experience that can be positive, or as an alternative. Some of the other jurisdictions have had an intern looking to work with their resume and be able to say they've had a city project that they've taken on. So it's one of those things where I think it can be a win-win. In those places where they've done the shadow days with employees, it's kind of an opportunity that the folks have had, and they've had kind of that glow, which is the opportunity to kind of show off what a day looks like themselves and be in a good position. So, Jim and Phil and, taking a look at, is there someone that might have an interest in staff to take something like this on?
Yeah, we can look around. In fact, we just had an event this last Sunday at Promise Park, but there happened to be a young man that was on a Buck Foundation internship for the summer that internshiped at our immigrant center, and he was delighted to have an opportunity to work in planning that.
I've had
and
a
so
chance
forth.
to meet him, so
Yeah,
he's really excited about it.
There are just maybe those kinds of serendipitous opportunities that might come along. So we've got some nice ideas here.
And I would just say, I attended the seminar on this at CML, and the $5,000 that Canyon City estimated, that was actually staff time. So it wasn't a line item in their budget, but it was the estimate to take those number of staff members for
So
the
it's
day.
kind of in kind cost, not outlay, not cash outlay.
Exactly. It wasn't a
Yeah.
cash out cost. It was a staff committing to taking that time.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I have
Is it-
one thing to say.
Sure.
You know, all these things that come down the line, there's a million projects that are really, truly great little projects for everything. My concern about this is the age of the kids, to take 2-year staggered terms and run them through 2 years. If you've worked with kids in high school now, how much extra time do they have on their plate?
That depends on the
And-
kid, but yes, absolutely.
I'm on the Greater Littleton Youth Initiative, and I haven't heard this come forth, and I think it should be brought to Littleton Youth Initiative since it's in this packet here. But that is my concern, is that sometimes we pack up our kids too much.
That was a concern, and I know that in Centennial and Lone Tree, they actually requested the kids to list how many activities they're involved in. To explain how many activities they're involved in, and to ask the students and their parents to sign something stating that they would be willing to serve for the 2 years and to devote the time required, giving an estimate of the time. So everyone knows going into it exactly how much time or about how much time is going to be required. Not everybody does, 4 sports and 3 activities. There's quite a few people in high school or in middle school especially. The younger students particularly are not quite as involved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marissa.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to item D, which is a discussion on fire permit fees, business license fees, and sewer service fees. And Bruce, why don't you take care of the...
Yeah, I'd make a motion to table the segment concerning sewer service charges.
Second?
How about if we postpone indefinitely, and then we can just bring it back?
I guess that's fair.
Is that okay, Phil? All right. Discussion? All in favor, raise your hands. That passes 7-0. Okay.
Okay, I think our finance director, Doug, are you going to lead this, or?
Chief Officer is going to take the first item on the agenda for fire plan permit fees.
Okay.
It's about money.
Come on, Jim.
Come up, we'll get you a microphone here, Jim. This is the head of our Fire Service Codes and Inspections Bureau, Jim Hofstra, and then also joining us at the table is our Finance Director, Doug Farman.
Well, you have the memo, I believe, in front of you. Basically goes over the history of the plan review and permit program that was started in 2002, or council authorized it in December of 2001. We started collecting money in 2002. We raised the fees approximately 15% in 2005. Through the budget process in the last year, Finance Department has told us to take a look at the permit fees and whether they are at an appropriate level. The 2008 study that was done on the fire service efficiency suggested that we bring our fees up to at least equal West Metro. And so I took a look at all those fees, and it's fairly complicated trying to compare one department to another because they calculate them different ways. Basically, we calculate things on a square footage. West Metro does them on a valuation basis. The building is worth so much, and they charge according to the building worth. South Metro did a big study, and they came up with their own fee schedule that's very intricate. Our plan review schedule, a fee schedule, is one page. West Metro's is 8 pages long, and I think South Metro's is 10 pages long. But Denver Fire Department's is 14 pages long, covering all different types of permits. I guess there's basically 3 different ways you can look at going. I mean, keep the fees the way they are now on the low end. The proposal that you have in the packet is like a 25% increase, and that puts us in between South Metro and West Metro. On certain buildings, South Metro is higher. On certain buildings, West Metro is higher. But this would put us basically in the middle. Or we could follow the study recommendation and go up maybe approximately 40%, in which case we'd probably be on the high end, but within a couple of years, we'd probably be back in the middle. I mean, historically now, we've had fees initiated in 2002, raised in 2005, so, unless you want to do a yearly review of this, you can plan on probably having these fees for the near future. I don't know if there's any questions on the schedule?
I know we set fees for different, using different philosophies. Some we do cost recovery, some we just do, as you say, sort of middle of the pack. Mm-hmm. But it would seem to me that this kind of fee would logically be a cost recovery fee. How much does it cost to do the things that each of these requires?
Well, now you're talking in terms of cost recovery as far as what the salaries cost for the program.
Yeah.
Now, again, you have to keep in mind that the fire inspectors, they do inspections, which these fees cover, but then they also do fire investigations too, and they do some public education. So, they do different things.
Yeah,
but in general, I would say that the Fire Prevention Division is, $700,000, $800,000 a year, salary-wise?
That sounds about right. We are splitting it right now. we have the two separate funds. We have the enterprise fund for the fire plant permit, and 70% of the salaries for those personnel are charged to that fund, 30% to the general fund for the education portion of it. So right now, there's about $513,000 in that enterprise fund. And then the revenues, I think we had projected $300,000 this year, but it looks like it's going to come in at about $200,000. But as Chief said, there is a fire inspection portion of that time too that we don't, the city does not charge a fee for those fire inspections. So there is no recovery on that portion of the cost for the chief's and his personnel's time.
You mean the investigations?
The investigations, I'm sorry, the investigations.
Generally.
You know how many?
Pardon?
Investigations. How many investigations run each year, roughly?
Approximately 50.
Well, I'm looking, I mean, at the ones that are here. If you're doing inspection, if you're doing a plan review, if you're doing those things, it seems to me that we ought to be recovering the cost of those. How we deal with some other things that maybe you all do is one thing, but are these fees actually covering the costs of doing these things?
No, it would not cover the whole cost. Just as in 2001, the cost was entirely borne by the general fund. There was no revenue at all, zero.
Well, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'd like us to shift in these, I'd like us to shift to trying to recover those. If we're doing a plan review, it's because somebody's got a project,
Right.
and it's not like of general value to the whole city, it's for that particular project.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So, but I don't know if other people.
I'm not going to get into the philosophy of the fees. I'm just want
throwing
to.
that out for council to see if anybody else feels that way, or you just want to increase.
Yeah, let me, and just clarify, the staff recommendation for 2012 is a 25% increase?
Correct.
Okay. And have we calculated our estimated revenue for that in 2012? Is that in our 2012 revenue estimates that we're going to look at on Friday?
That's right.
Okay, just clarification for me. Okay. Thank you.
Well, two things, I guess. To your question, was the assumption you just juice fees 25% and the volume is unaffected? I mean, there's not going to be less plans, or you guys aren't anticipating there's going to be any decrease in volume of activity as a result of increase in cost.
No, I don't think there'd be the economy drives it all.
Right.
The fees are not going to affect who's developed in the city.
Let me ask a different question, which I think gets a part of that. If I'm doing a project, okay, and I need to have an inspection or a plan review that's done, I imagine that what it's built into is the project costs itself.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
so
permit fees, whether they be building or fire, are all built into that.
So if there's a contractor that's involved, their bid on the project would need to be in a position to include whatever fees there are there. And so it's kind of the cost of the project that the contractor is going to have to, and the contractor, as we've seen on some of the reimbursement requests, may or may not be in a position, but typically they're going to collect and pass it through. That's kind of my understanding.
That's true, and I think and as you know, with Mr. Thielen, our building chief official, really this is sort of we look at what's sort of the standard benchmark in the market, and as you know, we've always tried to stay kind of at least middle, or maybe slightly below the middle. And so we've kind of just used what I would call an industry standard of what seems to be a fair fee that a contractor or building owner pays really all over the metro area.
And also what I've heard that I wanted to validate is that the OES study itself actually would have, if we would have followed all of those recommendations, would have actually suggested rather than a 25% aggregate increase of 40%.
They did suggest a much more significant increase, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, are these just commercial, or are they commercial and residential?
Well, it would be commercial and multifamily. There's no single-family residence, so it has to be 3 units, an apartment building. We really don't even get into townhomes. It's really apartment buildings, and then otherwise it's all commercial.
Bruce?
You've got the $200,000 and the $250,000 referenced in here. Am I correct in assuming those are strictly for the city? They're not split 3 ways with the partners?
No, that is total revenue.
So it would be split 3 ways?
That is actually split, you're absolutely right.
Yes, sir, they gained the benefit of this just under the regular formula, yes, sir.
Okay, so your 50 fire inspections is system-wide?
Yes.
Not just in the city?
Right.
Okay.
And in the discussions with the fire partners, they do support a fee increase.
And I would add that the 200,000 this year is really getting to I think, to the low ebb in the economy. I mean, we've been as high as 325.
Any more questions?
So if we're staying sort of in the middle, following that logic,
Yes, ma'am.
on what basis do the other folks set their fees? Are they just figuring this is how much the market will bear, or are they looking at cost recovery?
I think people look at, like I said, over the years, they've built up, as Chief Officer said, you kind of build in where you can create some revenue that is a service that's provided. It obviously also helps with the inspection services and the fire prevention services. So I can't tell, I doubt seriously that any fire agency has done a detailed cost allocation of the type you were suggesting to try to specify specific numbers of hours, because it's so difficult, to know. You've got to have the staff there, whether you're going to have an up year or down year. And so I think it's probably just an averaging of what seems to be reasonable that has built up over the years. That'd be my guess. Chief Officer may know.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, you can make these fee schedules as complicated as you want. I mean, we could be charging for a lot of things that we don't currently charge for, but you almost need to add a staff person to keep track of who you're billing, and you don't make enough money on those small $7,500 permits to justify having another staff person to do the billing.
Who does this? So who does this now? Who does the billing? How do you guys?
We generate a receipt. Deputy Fire Marshal Tim Stover over there, and I'd like to acknowledge he has done yeoman service. He does the plan reviews, and if you recall, in 2010 we lost a Deputy Fire Marshal, and we were doing 1,400 permits a year, so they were splitting that. So he was doing about 700 plan reviews a year, and now he's going to be running around 1,000. And so he's getting.
Do we have any extra charges for eyewear, glasses or anything?
Yeah.
Well, at least let me clarify. I think what you just said indicated you didn't understand what I said, which meant I didn't say it very well. When I'm thinking cost recovery, I'm thinking in terms of kind of the average amount of time it takes to do a given
certainly.
thing or whatever.
Yes,
And
yes,
it
yes.
wouldn't be like every single project you'd figure out the exact cost and bill.
We certainly, we cover the cost. In the time it takes him to do the plan review, I think we recover that cost.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, as far as covering all the costs for the whole Fire Prevention Bureau, we don't bring in enough money to do that.
That wasn't what I was
Okay.
asking.
Right.
Other questions? Motion? Or no motion?
Why would you do this now?
Pardon?
We need to do this now?
Well, we need to direct staff to bring us back a resolution or not to do it.
Make a motion that staff bring back a resolution increasing permit fees to the new recommended levels.
Second.
And the new recommended levels are,
At 25%?
Opposed?
pardon?
Included in the
proposed.
document.
Discussion? All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, 7-0. Thank you, Jim.
And
Very successful.
I would encourage that these be updated every couple of years anyway, because we observed last year that a lot of things that just kind of slid, and
Yeah.
we missed important revenue.
Yeah, West Metro has been reviewing their plans yearly. South Metro has not reviewed their plans in the last couple of years, but now they have an opening in the fire marshal's position, and I think they're looking at simplifying their permit fees from the 8 pages down to something that's a lot easier to calculate. So we'll have to see where they end up, and I can certainly bring that back to council when it's or at least send it to council when they have completed it.
Just my side comment is I appreciate a simpler schedule. I think folks can,
We think that the contractors certainly appreciate the simpler schedule.
I believe so.
Okay, Mr. Furman?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council. The next item is a discussion on a proposed business license fee. Staff presented Council with a business license fee proposal last September during the budget review, and this is an updated proposal that outlines many programs that could be funded by an annual license fee. And in the Council communication here, I do have some of those departments that support the fee and some of the services that would be supported by the fee. Code enforcement, for example, has a lot of zoning, code, compliance, permitting, and housing inspection purposes that could be funded by a business license fee. The business industry and affairs supports this idea because they would like the demographic information that they could collect from the businesses. They also think that it will help with parking needs and data collection, and also would enhance the communication that the city would have with the businesses, because right now we have no database. We don't even really have a good estimate on how many businesses are out there, except for which ones are licensed for sales tax purposes. As we just talked to Chief Hofstra, he supports the idea of a fee because for fire inspections, they have hazardous material compliance and code requirements that they have to deal with, and they would like to know which businesses are in place so they could inspect them on a regular basis and especially go out and make sure that they're complying with those type of code requirements. The proposed fee is a $35 initial fee and $30 annually. And this is a typical fee that, as you can see, a lot of municipalities charge businesses for various purposes, which are mainly for the ones I mentioned, code enforcement, fire inspections. And you can see some of those businesses or some of those cities in the survey results and what their fees are to the businesses. This would be a nominal fee paid by the businesses to fund many different business-focused services, and would also provide us with the ability to communicate with the businesses for various issues. So the departments that I outlined here, community development is another one that supports the idea of this fee, and it would also partially offset the sales tax divisional expenses, which are about $201,000 a year for providing auditing and sales tax processing. And then also, we do have to deal with the new licenses that come in and the paperwork and the returns and the payments that come in. So staff is recommending this fee. It would bring in 2012 projected revenue of about $157,500 and $135,000 in ongoing revenue to the general fund. So at this time I can answer any questions about that calculation.
Jim?
The non-filers that you talked about in here, are these service providers that would have to have a license?
Yes.
And
So they would be professional services that don't have to pay the sales taxes right now.
And so there would be a reduced fee for that group?
That's correct. That way we can at least account for them. They could be inspected and we could communicate with them and they could be part of our database. We can determine how many employees they have, what their parking purposes are, needs are, those type of things. So we thought it would be a smaller amount, reduced amount for those type of businesses.
Doug? When people get a sales tax license, don't they pay a fee for the sales tax license?
No, they do not.
No, they don't. But they turn in sales tax.
Use
as
tax.
A tax.
Right, and a lot of them remit that on a monthly basis or quarterly basis when we process those payments. And we don't have online payments yet, so all of those are a manual process.
So you're proposing a fee for the privilege of paying a tax on sales?
Well, part of it would offset some of the costs that are involved for processing those fees, those taxes that are collected, yes. And then we also do a lot of auditing of businesses and compliance and educational programs.
I think Denver instituted something like this a year or two ago, and I've heard some very strong comments about having to pay a fee for the privilege of then having to turn around and pay a tax.
I think the larger issues are the code enforcement, the community development, business industry and affairs. Those are the other programs that this would go to support.
Well, if-
Yeah, any other questions? Peggy?
Yeah, so I love the economic development program. Why not just charge a small fee if somebody wants to do that? To use, I mean, if they're only going to pay the amount that's here, why not just charge them for economic development service?
That could be a concept, and if we wanted to fund some of what business industry and affairs does with assisting companies to market.
And if we had, like, just as we have with the multifamily code inspection, could we not have a fee for business code inspection?
Well, the fee for multifamily is on a reinspection, I believe.
Well, I know, but that's, yes, but,
We don't have a fee for
right,
the
but I mean, if, I didn't say it right, I've skipped over that part, sorry, thank you. But if they had to go back on a reinspection for business, charge on that, charge on certain things. I'm not real comfortable with, let's just charge a fee to happen to cover all these kinds of things.
Well, I think this general fee would encompass a lot of business-centric topics and issues that come up. Like I said, the parking regulations,
But I'm not following that.
when we do parking studies, or we're trying to identify how many employees a business requires for parking stalls, how many customers they generate to go to their business for various parking needs. There's a lot of code enforcement issues that are specific to businesses. So that's I think what the fee would cover. You know, most of the businesses that come in and they register for a sales tax license, they're very surprised that they don't have to pay a fee. Because it's very typical. It's just a normal cost of doing business in most jurisdictions, and they find it to be a normal cost.
Well, like when we, if I'm remembering this, if we have a multifamily unit, I think they pay a fee to register initially, but then they don't pay more. Is that right, Jim? Remember there was...
I know they pay the police a fee for registering the owner of the complex, and it's a per building fee.
And, but then but it's not annual, it's just the initial. I think it's when
believe
it...
it's an annual fee.
I didn't think it was. Remember that issue came up with that a fussy
You know
person?
what, I cannot give you a clear answer on that. Does
Yeah, I'm
anybody?
not sure which fee that is in particular.
I think, remember...
Police
you
charge a
remember-
fee?
Yep, because the police want to be able to contact the owner of the apartment building if they have issues with it.
I thought it was
Oh, for
just the
alarms?
initial,
Well, for
the
alarms
initial.
and
You
for-
looked it up last year when
That's what I
someone-
remember, Peggy, but I can't
Yeah.
remember clear enough to give you a
So,
definitive answer tonight.
I'm seeing it better to have some discrete things that we really think we need to recover costs for, rather than just a just-in-case kind of fee. So if we find out how many people somebody needs for parking, what in the world are we going to do with that? I mean, what are we doing with that? But anyway, that's a different issue. So I think some of these could be broken out and just focus on those rather than just the all-encompassing. But
Bruce?
Assuming this would have to do with just businesses that physically reside within the city limits, so this would not have anything to do with, say, auto dealers outside of the city limits who sell a car to somebody in the city.
This would apply to anybody doing business in the city, out of city or out of state.
What about internet?
Yes,
Really?
yes.
You got any way to enforce that?
Well, they would have to have a sales tax license. That's the only way to enforce it. Otherwise, no, we don't have a.
So we have.
That's basically an honor system. If they're generating a use tax, and they would pay it voluntarily.
Use taxes?
Well, if they download software and they don't pay sales tax online, which generally those online retailers don't collect sales tax, they would have to remit the use tax, which is basically a sales tax, but they would have to voluntarily remit that.
So do we collect, we don't, do we?
So we wouldn't normally, I mean, we do collect some of that money from some of the bigger corporations that pay attention to it, but otherwise, no, there's a lot of money out there that we don't receive because a lot of transactions are going on over the internet that are not required to collect sales tax on.
This sort of philosophically, I mean, it's a real gray area in my opinion. You clearly were trying, and I respect what you're trying to do. I mean, I understand you guys are trying to be creative in terms of finding incremental revenue. By the same token, to the extent that we have a tax base and we start then incrementally charging for services over and above what the tax base is, I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that. I mean, if the tax base is supposed to cover, for the most part, the services the city provides, and it's insufficient for doing that, then in theory we ought to go ask for an increase in the sales tax rate.
Well, that could be a source too, but
I mean, that's more direct.
Theoretic.
Sort of, at the edges, we're sort of nibbling at the margin of this thing, and it just, I don't know, I'm scuffling with this one a little bit, just conceptually, that it's sort of starting to encroach on the integrity of the process, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is not unique. It's not a unique idea to the city of Littleton. I guarantee you a lot of these jurisdictions have been charging a business license fee for many, many, many years. And in my mind, businesses do ask for additional services that other property owners don't need, don't require, and the city is providing those services really at no additional cost. And so I'm just trying to ask for some type of reimbursement for those incremental services.
But are they incremental services truly, or are they services we provide that have traditionally been covered by essentially the revenue collected by the sales tax? I mean, we're not doing things incremental that we have never done. All we now are saying is we should charge for it because.
Well, I think logically it should have been a few years ago. Yeah. It should be services that are rendered and fees to be reimbursing those services.
Well, then I guess ultimately, how do you respond to the question, and what do the sales tax cover? I mean, does the sales tax not cover fee for service?
Well, I think the sales taxes are just part of it, and that's why we're asking those tax filers to pay a little bit higher fee. Like I said, we have to do a lot of auditing, we do education, we answer a lot of questions from new businesses that come in.
I agree with you completely, but we're kind of in a philosophical discussion rather than a.
Well, that's what study sessions are for, to find out what your comfort level is, so.
Yeah.
I think the biggest point is that we can communicate with those businesses in a more effective manner, and we can find out which businesses are out there, which businesses need to be permitted for certain purposes. Right now, we have no idea which businesses are out there. When they do a tenant improvement, we really cannot monitor that because we don't have a database. And when I talk to other department heads, they're very supportive of this because they see a big need to be able to at least have this database, be able to communicate with these businesses.
Well, is there a way maybe to have a carrot to get them to register with us? Instead of a hammer?
If we want to voluntarily ask for that, that's just going to create more staff time that's not reimbursed for. So,
Council, anybody want to make a motion on this?
I'll move that we move forward with having a resolution on business licensing for tax filers as well as non-filers come forward.
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to create a new fee for licensing businesses. Discussion? Bruce?
I have reservations. I'll probably vote for this because I want to consider it further. But I'm not entirely convinced this is a good idea. So.
Bill?
I think with this, not entirely sure all of where it's going to go. I would encourage staff to come back with the value proposition side of the discussion because I think that's what we're tangling with. In part, it's kind of a at some level a membership fee of which some folks take advantage of different elements that are on the menu than others. But aggregately, it may be a worthwhile membership fee, but I think the value proposition needs to be paired with the consideration for any kind of fee level at this level. So I would encourage that.
Deb?
No, it's
Too late
just
now?
throwing something on the back of business again. I mean, the city is financially, the bulk of our support, the bulk of our money comes from sales tax, comes from our businesses that are generating income. And, you know, I'm sorry if our databases are a little weak. I'm sorry if we don't have up-to-date information on parking demands. The reality is the people that are paying sales tax, you have that information. You know where they are. You know what, you can go ask them how many employees they have. I mean, I don't know that we need to build a database on that. People that are working from home, they don't have any parking demands. What this does is that this alerts code enforcement to the home occupations, and then we'll have, code enforcement running around checking everybody's houses to make sure they're legit for business. And while there's some legitimacy to that, while we don't want to have a bunch of things that are out there inappropriate, I just think that there's a better way to go around it, to throw a tax on people so we can keep an eye on them. It just doesn't sound good to me. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's just one more fee. I understand raising these fees. I understand that we've been below on a lot of our fees, and it's probably appropriate for us to get at least in the mid-range on some of these things, but, we'll keep dinging the same people over and over again. The fees we just did on fire is going to ding business. This will ding business. Let's give business a fighting chance.
I think Debbie's a no.
I think Debbie's a no. And I'm going to vote against this because we're not providing any new service for this. We're basically creating a fee to generate revenue because we don't want to go and ask the citizens for a tax increase. And that's an unfortunate shifting of the funding of government that I don't agree with. I mean, you carry this to the logical conclusion, and when people pick up their phone and dial 911, the first thing they ask you for is your credit card number. And if we charge a fee for every service that we provide, then, as Bruce said, what's the point in doing taxes? So I think the fees that we collect ought to be related to a specific service that the fee is being collected for. If we're collecting a fee for a permit plan check, then we're actually checking the permit that the fee's going for. If we're collecting a business registration fee, I mean, we fund the BIA department to the tune of, what, $600,000 a year?
A little over 500.
Yeah, and
Yes,
that's to encourage business. So if we're trying to recoup the costs that we spend to encourage business, then, as Peggy said, charge a fee for it, because that is something that directly affects business. But the reason why we don't do that is because we think the value of the service that's provided outweighs the cost of doing it, that it makes the city healthy. So I sympathize with your effort to generate more revenue for the city. I can't go along with it on this particular fee. So, any other discussion? All in favor of directing the council to bring us, or the staff to bring us a resolution creating a new business registration tax, raise your hands. So that's Jim and Phil. All opposed? Everyone else?
Doug, thanks for the research.
Thank you.
You
Sure,
did
thank
what
you
they
very
asked
much.
you to do, and you know, it's council's comfort level, and so.
All right, that brings us to Debbie.
It's like, that brings us to a break. City
Afterwards.
City Council, let's see. I move that City Council convene an exec session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-402(4) to give negotiation instructions for fire service contract and automatic aid to Trailmark.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to have an exec session on contract negotiations, and we need to add personnel.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Section F for a personnel matter.
Yes. All right, discussion. This takes 5 votes. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, we have a 7-0 on that. Jim asked a question about the questions that we were going to hopefully do tonight.
Questions we did for the candidates?
We did.
Discussed tonight.
We have a new list of proposed questions that Mercer came up with that they just sent out this afternoon.
I haven't seen those.
Well, nobody's seen it because I have it right here.
So we're going to work off the revised list?
Well, and I have to say that I have had no time to look at the questions. I was hoping to do that between last night and today, so I haven't had time. Yeah. Yeah, basically. So we're going to have to schedule this for another time, but let's look at that. Let's take a 7-minute break, and we'll meet in the building conference room next door.